First is framework agency or setting in the pursuing events is inescapable. That's for 9 to engage in any enterprise to engage in agency. Agency is locally to adjudicate the merits of participating in actual reflection, manifestation of agency. Closed under reflective rational assessment. There's always a possibility of reflecting justification while standing outside the constitutive features of agency. Continue to operate whether justified reflection on about agency is a manifestation of agency. This outweighs a point agency can arbitrarily ignore rationality since it's function and condition of agency in the first place. So even if another framework is true, that would also operate within the requirements of reason to self-viewpoint. Morality must provide a motivational reason for action. Otherwise, agents can be morally culpable since knowing that an action is immoral is not sufficient to override the action absence of motivation to do so. And agency is non-optional, which means rationality is intrinsically binding and motivational. And agency posits universalizability. Two warrants first ends must be universalizable. Any other one justifies someone's ability to impede on your ends. Also means reason side is a side constraint on ends-based framework. That CR991 I represent my end is to be done. I represent as binding me certain course of action. Thus my end function constraint on me and to determine what I can do, and representing my end in my recognition from it and other forms of other subjects. Since the end function is objective through self-imposed constraint, I cannot be indifferent to actions of others. For these either hold me or hinder my pursuit of my end. Hence, if I am committed to realizing my end, I must demand the worth of my end be recognized by others. And viewpoint is universal. Will is your prerequisite self-determination of action. Anything else means desire, control, or action. Thus, the actor is no longer the agent. That's Court Card 96. For every action involves a decision proposed on or to will, you must identify the incentive of your action. Incentive would be the law defined by your agency or your will. You would not identify the incentives represented in their source. Since you took it to be represented as you would be taken it to be universal, truly particularistic. Will must embrace the incentive full particularity. There's only one, the complete domination of agent by something inside of him, and a violation of freedom contradiction can never be universalized. That's Angstrom OA's maximum self freedom to further result in a contradiction. Universal law involves considering whether a person should judgment asserting goodness to maximum. All persons to deem good limitation of freedom extension of their own, and thus the standards consisting of system of equal not of freedom for additionally first argumentation presuppose some basic freedom principle. Otherwise, it cannot occur. That's top 98. No one would pursue. No one could propose anything if one right to make one's use physical bodies would not already presuppose any. One would try to justify any norm must presuppose the exclusive right to control in order to say I must propose such. Then he disputing such a right would become a contradiction, and also implies my framework debate is messy. Defaults constitute not enforce an ethical standard. Others we were unsure about, rather let them discover the true ethical theory. Third, second is culpability. People can only be held responsible for unethical actions if they choose to do them, but choice itself requires people to pick which actions to take a threat of force. For example, if someone's holding a gun to my head makes me steal someone's apple, naturally culpable because I wasn't free. That means freedom side constraint on valid structural obligations. And third is consequential is missing coherent point. We can't be culpable for consequences determined by external forces. Hegel 20 responsibilities mine insofar as the outer reality within my conscious and act it wouldn't realize handed unto external forces to attach to something different from what is in itself and carry distant consequences of the right and a will to adopt only the first consequences. They alone lie in purpose, and B point is every consequence cause another consequence chain of infinite max. That means either every action would be had infinite value. There's no way to waste even consequentialism requires heuristic to determine the probability of consequences occurring. That means we must also calculate the probability of this heuristic determine probability so on to infinity, and prefer additionally operator knowledge to concentrate on any moral judgment that's would there are universal operator judgment. The concept of the cause contains the concept of necessity connection with an effect and strict universality. The rule if you remove your empirical concept of object you can still not take it away from by means which you think of it as substance or dependent on substance, thus convinced of necessity which this concept presses itself to. You must concede that seating your faculty of condition a priori to universalizability because every person has access to the same inherent truths that are contained within themselves. Advocacy. Result, the United States reports outside the right to protect identity confidential source side of and the resolution general principles are so spec and picks are relevant to know just through my general thesis. If you want me to spec, I'll open doing so in cross-examination. I'll defend implementation normally means self-spec. That's contention once coercion, mandatory disclosures, coercive to source force them to reveal information to the core when they don't want to. Strength 13 protection anonymous speech, advanced liberty, freedom to speak anonymously, shielded from tyranny, majority protection. All speakers ensure that readers will not judge her message because they dislike its opponents and thus push direct liberty or benefit of upon the speaker. Government interference without anonymity, content control, first identification requirements, force the speaker to reveal the content of her thoughts and thus forcing conveys the content that the speaker did not wish and convey. Second, such requirements literally force the inclusion of additional text the speaker name when the speaker has made editorial judgment to exclude it, and coercion reported to reveal so she treats her words that they were mere means to end because it doesn't include them in the end, which takes the choice away from them. That violates universalizability. You can on extension that's just crossed by the Angstrom argument from the framework. Second contention is privacy. Controlling dissemination of one of information is inherent right under the omnilateral world, and neg violates this by forcing disclosure. DSU and Delta 15 privacy is control over information about oneself. Privacy is entering fundamental for one's development and individual development. Respect privacy allows one to maintain varying degrees of intimacy. Privacy is essential for relationship. There's third privacy and third integrity. Person's basic right and need to define and pursue one's own is free from an impingement of others. Privacy allows for him to define relationships with oneself. Privacy is connected to respect. Privacy is written necessary for communication, relationship, control, and information development through self-legitimacy intrusions. Privacy invasions. Contention 3's promises. Mandatory disclosure reports reports that Rick Parsons sources prevents report from faculty checking government actions. Board 292 doesn't traditionally respect confidentiality agreements reports about subject to institutional pressures. A new person routinely breached confidentiality promises sources that hesitate to distribute information. News organization given external demands disclose confidential source identities. Autonomy compromised where they will become investigated arms of the government and links to the standard breaking promises as a contradiction or categorical imperative caution large of supposing universality that everyone should be free to promise whether they please as a person not for keeping the promise itself to become impossible since no one considered anything that promised to him that Maximus did not bother to tell the truth or keep promise would be universalized. The truth-telling promise keeping would soon fall into disuse. No one would believe anyone. Under review. We get one error theory. You could check back infinite negative B says drop debate or when something to collapse as a voting issue. Also, net can keep positions for positive time trade-off. It makes theory on strategic non-diverse voting issue can cross apply one error to RBI means dispense all 6 minutes on theory since it's highest layer, making it so that the F can never win. And no new 2 in our response to the under review cross by 6 minutes collapse. Second is that the negative must defend the status quo. The counter advocacies are legitimate. Plan 89. The counter plan begs the question being asked. Counter plan not response to the resolution. Explicitly limits the range of discussion. Should we affirm the resolution status quo that exists when debate commences? Where does negative fiat come from? It does negative have the right to implement proposals? Fiat is not reciprocal. Negative already benefit from fiat in the resolution as much as the counter plans have no legitimacy. Values or should not wouldn't be sacrificed. Only those that were not truly reasons to reject the F. So,
All right. Are we good for cross?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. So let's go to the underview with the Plants 89 card. Is this about like the status quo policy option or like an epistemological standpoint?
It's about a alternative policy action to the app.
So KL would be legitimate if it's like change this epistemological value.
Probably, yeah.
So that would be legitimate. All right.
No, it would be illegitimate.
Why would it be illegitimate? What's the warrant in the card?
Because the resolution, or nowhere in the argument is that nowhere in the resolution does it say that you fiating some other action there disproves the validity of the resolution. It's not like, oh, here's just some other great thing that you should endorse. Rather, it's a question of the specific action the resolution posits and whether that should be pursued or not.
Okay. So let's go to your framework. Can you explain the wood card to me?
The last one?
Yeah.
The argument is, it makes the claim that a priori knowledge exists and is constrained on judgment, and then
what is a priori knowledge?
It's like truth claims that exist independent of human experience.
So it's like 100% true 100% of the time that like me throwing a pen in your face would be bad because violence.
Well, I think that statement that you just said is dependent on human experience, i.e. our experience with how pens, gravity work, etc. Something that would be a priori knowledge is like common example of a triangle having 3 sides, right? It's the truth of the statement is contained within itself. So independent of whether humans discovered it or know about it, it is true.
So let's go to more of your framework. Let's go to the course card. You say you have to will everything, right?
What do you mean? I'm not sure what that means.
What's the warrant in the course card? It talks about like universal willing. What is willing?
Oh, so it's understanding and reflecting on an action that you take.
So humans choose all actions, right?
What do you mean all?
So like if I was to sneeze right now, just out of nowhere, I would will to take that action.
Not necessarily, because
so which actions are willed actions and which actions aren't? Like, is there
actions that we choose to, when we reflect on the current state of affairs of our reason, and we choose to take our action. The fact that we chose to take that action is that choice that makes it willing an action.
Okay, so all right, So on your framework in general, like what's the bright line for universalizability? So can I universalize that like everyone wears a blue shirt?
No. I think that empirical circumstance or immediate circumstance, something like a blue shirt would be irrelevant to the maxim. I think if you want to add or modify a maxim in such a way that it encompasses the specificity of your action, it should be in a way that makes it more productive.
Right.
And Korsgaard actually talks about this in her in the 96 article.
So it's 5 minutes for this tournament. Goes Texas. All right, time starts now. Alright. I have 3:14 left, or it's going to be too off in case. You use he, him, his pronouns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, cool.
Yours?
She, her. My table took leg is being weird. Do you mind if I just get a sip of water? Yeah, no, at this tournament last year I got dehydration, which was not fun, so. Are we good?
Yeah.
All right. First K is framing. Employing a discourse whose purpose is subject to construct ethical obligations is lexically prior to any particular system moral rules. Therefore, we are obligated to critique the normative context in which the subject arises before we consider any particular set of norms. Failure to attend to this process can not only render our moral assertions meaningless, but also make them a guise for ethical violence. Butler 05. If the I cannot be disjoined from social life, then ethics will not only presuppose rhetoric, but social critique as well as reduction of ethical philosophy. The inward relations to conscience not only suffers ethics from social life, but fails to understand the resource of relation to others as a precondition of ethical responsiveness. One must outside the formation, the subject implies a framework for understanding ethical responsive versus the self-preoccupied moral inquiry returns to a narcissism that's supported through socially enforced rules of individualism that would seem obligatory to return the question of responsibility to the question how are we informed within social life and at what cost. Thus, we have a prima facie obligation to reject normative discourse that engages in the ethical violence of excluding people from the moral universe at the level of subject formation. Debaters are to be held responsible for the discourses that they imply that our words are used in competitive debate context, not as the fact that are expressions of our agency which shape the boundaries of acceptable thought and contribute to the formation of our identities. Pleader 2K. Language is fundamental appendages of every axis of politics, but languages are never neutral. They embody particular values and ideas imposed out of assumptions on our framework. Thus, it's subtly that we are mostly unaware of the system of exclusion that are being entrenched. Yet, language is a form of action that place where possibilities for social change emerge, where values are slowly changed from where individuals who are about thinking space and engage in everyday forms of resistance. So, evaluate the critique before anything else in the round. If I demonstrate the discourse like employed by the one AC ought to be rejected in favor of the discourse and present an alternative, you ought to negate this is also a reason to reject the plants card at the bottom of the AC. That's the link. The standard defense is Kantian political theory is an appropriate mode for justification that political social practice is justified by resolution. Kantian deontology proceeds as the subject is purely rational being detached from any particular social location or identity. Sandal 98. His answers are that the basis of moral law has to be found in a subject capable of autonomous will. The rational being himself must be made the guys for all maxes. Only such a subject elevates man and elevates into participating in an ideal and conditioned realm wholly independent of our social and psychological inclinations. The concept as a subject given prior and independent of its objects offers the foundation for the moral law, which unlike merely empirical foundations awaits neither teleology nor psychology. That's the impact. The level conception of the subject excludes marginalized voice and undermines the ability to employ meaningful moral discourse to combat a domination that's exclusive conception of rationality and political person to justify domination or oppress meaningful moral discourse. Medico 5. A narrow definition has worked to allow the dominant view to brand others such as rational and intuition that has taken rationality to be the characteristic of fully human moral subject. This has had serious consequences. Slaves and a free woman being less rational need to be ruled. The dark haunted needs to have latent rule imposed. Conquest, rule mastery are served by a notion that is narrow and absolutized. When one is said that's rational, one is dependent on oneself, asking whether it's true, whether it's meaningful, expressive, and significant experience. And the concept of rational man fails to account for the unchosen moral demands of particular identities and so fails to account for indispensable access to the moral experience. Handle 98. Deontology insists we view ourselves as independent and selves and our identities never tied to our aims and achievements. We cannot regard ourselves in this way without loyalties and convictions. Its moral force consists in the fact that it's living by them and inseparable from understanding ourselves and the particular persons we as members of this community or nation or people are more than values I have to have they allowed to that to somewhat not by reason of agreements but in virtue of enduring attachments. Which define the person I am to imagine a person capable of constitutive attachments is an imagined person wholly without moral depth, have characters, know what I'm even that I'm even history, neither as some or man in a self-determining being. I'm able to reflect on my history and distance myself with the distance, always been gregarious and provisional. The winner reflected never finally secured as the side of the history itself. A person with character knows that he's implicated in various ways, that even as he reflects and feels the moral weight of what he knows. That's the alternative. The alternative is to conduct moral agency or subjectively by focusing on context, relationality, and politics. Rejecting the division of humans based on exclusive conception of reason and agency allows for reawakening moral imagination, waits at seek not only truth but meaning. Medico 5. Visions where we can go to emerge from critiques where we are winning and that's unjustly erroneous nation. The humans are divided into kinds that hide and misfire real appearances. by casting those divisions that make it with yourself unnecessary barriers to understanding, respecting, or cooperation, questioning notions and moral regions based on mystified conceptualization of the individual, as well as reason we become open to noticing that some people make moral decisions by considering the needs and values of particular individuals in the context of real life that proceeded and will continue after the decision has been made, rather than invoking supposedly timeless, falsely abstracted moral principles that cannot adequately connect with the interdependent particularity of the world in which we must, after all, start to be moral. We become better and able to live up to the claim that philosophy is not a list of texts of familiar problems from one tradition, but a quest for wisdom and effort to mind meanings as well as truths. Next off, leaks create a codependent between government and the media. Post 13. Leaks foster the symbiotic relationship between government and mainstream, passing informally customary traffic and streak information that characterize the direction of specialized core reporters and American officials. Leaks are the coin of the business and media outlets of the lead publication or withheld details and landed concerns raised by foreign officials. These acts of restraint and right the industries claiming being a sort of public interest, and media are not independent fact fighters, but in fact engage in the manufacture of consent by limiting the terms of the debate in favor of lead interests from initial CO2. Media serve to mobilize support for the professional interests that dominate the state and private activity, and the powerful are able to affect the promises of the discourse to side with the general populace, allowed to hear, see, or think about and manage public opinion by regular propaganda campaigns and manufacturing consent. It's become a regular organ of popular government. Most by the choice in the media, rights in the police election, right-thinking people, internalized preconceptions, and adaptation of personnel to the constitution of ownership, market, and political power views to challenge fundamental premises. We exclude from the mass media the power of the government to fix frames and reference and agendas, and we exclude inconvenient facts from public inspection is impressively displayed. Inconvenient facts less sparingly in the proper framework and fundamental dissent, and virtually excluded from the mass media makes propaganda system that is far more effective than official censorship. And skip the next. The media is an athlete for neoliberal government corporate propaganda. This destroys the public sphere and undermines democracy. And Brennan Chomsky too. Centralization in the media has accelerated and opposed giants under all the world's major film stories, TV networks, and music companies, and outside the world factor the most important cable channels, stable systems, navigating media network, TV stations, above publishers. Googling the power of these firms with their corporate interlocking unified cultural and political values, based troubling issues with the individual soul in American democracy. They share avoidance of defending and political controversy that would be trouble from political patrons. A significant proportion of news originates PR releases. There are 20,000 more public relations working doctor the news and journalists writing at these changes to seriously weaken the public sphere, in which information relevant to intelligent citizen participation is provided. The cultural power of marketing is caused the displacement of public sphere by depoliticized consumer culture. These consumption-based clusters are also the physical communities that share elements of the church cut the card there, and the alternatives analyze the media through the lens of the propaganda model. Herman and Chomsky too. The mass media serves as a system for communicating messages and symbols that are function to entertain and inform and collate individuals with beliefs and codes of behavior that integrate them into the institutional structures of society and the world. Concentrated with the multi-major conflict of class areas of full this role requires systematic propaganda model focused on the quality of wealth and power and its multi-level efforts on mass media interests and choices are the routes by which money and power are able to filter the news, marginalize and allow the government and dominant private interests to gather messages across the public. These people convince themselves that they choose the news objectively with the conditions of power of the built into the system in such a fundamental way that alternative by pieces of news choices are hardly imaginable. It requires macro along with the micro view media operations, see the pattern of manipulation and systemic bias. Skip the card, and now in case. One term confidentiality encourages lying. Source confidentiality can inherent accountability and verifiability. This terms always see office-based predicated on a belief that sources will always be truthful. Can't fiat individual action. Wasserman 05. Circuits reporting and corporate reliance on informants will not talk unless ensured of anonymity of confidentiality. Poses ethical conflicts because may clash with accountability and verifiability. This result may be truth telling secrecy, may also hinder accountability by opposing the journalist between informant and public and fronting third parties of challenging sources. Verifiability enables three parties to determine that words are spoken just or reported by the person who said it after that confidentiality may incur opposites. 2. Turn makes exception from reporters which violate universalizability. Reporters are privileged to put them against law. 3. Turn content though I imagine that actually skip this. 4. 3 is moralities where individual rational agents of the government contracting agents don't apply. On underview on plans 1, nowhere in the card doesn't even talk about LD debate on specific techniques. A rational policymaker would consider alternative option or the option itself. 3 is all the words are regarded by policy adoption. Right. If you want, I can send you an updated talk.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Alright, the updating doc is being sent right now. The doc, it just says XXS, where I didn't talk after that.
Okay.
Alright, ready for cross-X.
Starting. Your first critique, what about the off links? It just says that discourse is
The framework.
Oh, it's just so it just says discourse should shape the way we.
Well, that's just a
understand
framing
ethics.
section, so you're just reading lines
So
off the framework. So
okay.
basically it talks about, so if you look at the link card, which is the Sandal 98 card, it talks about how the AF uses Kantian political theory as a justification for ethics.
So
and
do you
the K talks about how that's bad.
contest the truth of the AC framework?
We just say that your scholarship, by legitimizing the AC framework and your speech act of reading it
So
around is
to
bad.
clarify, you don't contest that it's true. You just say that the scholarship of the AF is bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we say that, like, we don't say that, like, Kantian ethics should or should not be used. We say that your performance of reading Kantian ethics is a way in which it is, like, a form of excluding subject formation. And your conception of the subject is bad.
How does my conception of the subject exclude discourse?
So, sure, it doesn't talk about excluding discourse. It talks about so under Kantian belief, there is this, so there's this subject that just is free of all other burdens, that's just, like, a soul full of, like, liberty and individual belief and universalizability, but Kantian belief often detaches the subject from their identity. So for me, if I was part of the AC actor...
To clarify, the link is Kant is often used in ways that,
it's not Kant is often used, it's Kant's, philosophy is.
We talk about specific identities in the AF. Like, what's the bright line for detachment?
The bright line for detachment is the Kantian identity and Kantian philosophy as a whole idealizes this liberal moral subject in which a subject is detached from all forms of identity.
Can you read me from a piece of evidence that an argument that says that the embodied individual is impossible in the context of Kant? Because it seems to me like that's just
what do you mean by that?
True.
Like, you say in your course card evidence that, like, all people have, like, universal willing, every action involves a decision on a proposal. Like, you must not identify the
status of the alternative.
The status of the alternative is conditional.
Okay. Of both
Yes.
alternatives? Okay. Where does the AF in any way say that we empower the media?
Sure. So you empower the media by literally just doing the plan. So
that seems to be like an argument that I made, but I never say anything about the media or empowering it. So like,
we just say you're empowering the media, but the action of the plan does that.
Where do you say that?
In the Opposing 13 card.
Where is
we just
that?
talk about how the media,
Wait, this says the media is bad. Where does it say that the AF leads to an empowerment of the media?
Sure. So the Opposing 13 card, it talks about how leaks, aka usage of anonymous sources leaking things, is bad. That's a pretty solid link.
Okay.
I can read you specific warrants.
No, it's fine. Okay. You don't respond to the first argument in the interview?
No. You can have one error theory.
Starting pro.
It's a Halloween present. I have you have 56 seconds.
Sorry, 56.
Or, no, yeah,
54.
54, yeah. That works for me.
I'm sending out the
What's the order going to be?
new off, NC offs in order they were read.
Where is it? Can you send a text of the counter or the intro if it's
It's
there?
in the doc.
Okay. You know when I get it. Okay, I just got it. Okay. Yeah. So orders new off AF Ks in which they're read.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So everyone's good?
Yes.
1 second, actually. Computer's being slow. Okay, I'm now good.
First off, interpretation debates may not depend more than one conditional advocacy violation. You depend to both your alternative standards strategy to arguments functionally if the only my opponent can generate offense from the offside candidate means that the opponent gets to do one structural advantage because of especially proud about time crunch 20 hours since my opponent can just collapse in one area and inevitably don't reach strategy key to fairness when we can actually have fair debate with inevitably two large structural advantage. Second, stopping strategy ensures both debaters equitable solid and winning. Also, it wouldn't be bad with one counterval because I could still I would still be focused. The debate would still be focused on that one specific issues, but when you add multiple layers, then it becomes impossible because it's functionally multiple nibs, which means that generic condo good isn't going to be suffice. Second, substance engagement point running conditionality, actual point of any potential problems of one's advocacy. Substance engagement key versus allows better debater wins. A person who's just better coach and proud their fairness of debating compared to activity governed by the rules. Obviously, doing second straight drop debater points that are on viewpoint to future be super wrecked 5 times as a theory crossplay. Arguments for the AF when your theory is legitimate. Use convenience to point reasonability is arbitrarily the intervention, even if you have Brightline still arbitrarily determined by debater. Second is obviously collapse convenience, which I use reasonably the Brightline when standard based better because it's more verifiable and the AF proper. Even you can see most of the offense your responses. There's actually no weighing here. You're definitely going to pull the trigger in the AF. I'm going for the coercion advantage. So sources are coerced in the world is coerced to coerce to reveal information. The AF would solve that. Could give them certain protections to impede the intrinsic act against coerces. Always the arguments. First, your arguments are contingent on consequentialism. You say the AF is going to lead to lying. Obviously, that relies on the logic of induction, which is obviously indicted in the context of the affirmative. Second, that my arguments independently weighs because obviously the entering evidence indicates that in the context of my framework coercion is we have a prima facie burden or preferred duty to avoid coercion. So in the context of you've never contextualized those sort of things in the context of lying, etc. Your lack of weighing analysis is going to lose you the debate under the frameworks. On the now quick extension out of the AF, you can see the truth value of the framework. How you can crossify, like for example, the prior evidence indicates that agency is inescapable. Therefore, we have to something like rationality universalized, which means that even that also takes a terminal defense of the critique because it proves that it's not a question of us endorsing the scholarship. Rather, we're just saying this is the way the world works, and therefore this obligation, the fact that we must understand the world in this way is inescapable. Also, understanding the way the world in some there's some different understanding is just straight up wrong. So even if it sucks, and we live in a shitty world. Too bad. Second is that you're don't classify the critique on framework as a voting issue. The critique is just the reason why the framework should be rejected. But insofar as they don't read some competitive framework or some offensive competitive framework, you vote off first of offense. The affirmative. Third is that now on your critiques operating points and you're actually go on the discourse first framing argument, we not mutually exclusive with the affirmative. We meet this argument across by the hop argument. It talks about how discourse is inevitable without understanding or realizing your own freedom. You within the context of the round means even if you do win, there's some sort of pre-fiat post-fiat distinction. You automatically vote the critique first. My argument is that Kant functioned on the pre-fiat level because within the context of the round, your ability to contest Kant is premised on your ability to have things like free speech, etc. So something like coercion should be avoided even in the pre-fiat realm. My arguments still apply and can still be cross-applied on your Kant's like an abstract argument. First, Kant is an ideal theory. Kant is subject its dual nature. They're embodying concrete. My also transcendent formulate the principle to keep empirical impulses in check. Only my framework includes moral perspective of all genes. As far too, Kant is the case of making moral agents abstract, empty subject, and looking further for the truth. Content of genes embody the fact that you're not simply satisfied when desires considering the rightness actions suggest empirical character must be held in check. My intelligible character formula principles keep our impulses in check. The formula universal law is more than we can outlook in maxims that are open to all sorts of the individual is not allowed to exclude from moral agents. Hence, universalizability principle consisting inclusion to perceptive moral agency. Specifically true in the context of the affirmative. We talk specifically about the identity of reporters and contextualize the coercion they experience and the oppression they experience in the context of the affirmative. Also justifies the permutation because your methodology is consistent with the affirmative. We can understand the embodied subject context K, and the Keneal K points that all links are consequentialism, are consequentialist, i.e. the leaks argument says that it's going to lead to like neolib increasing, which means that you reject the actual framing because it relies on things like induction. That's the Hegel argument because we don't will consequences. Second is that the aft fractures the meter classify like your lying argument in the context of the affirmative. That's probably at the very least terminal defense of the K. And the aft obviously is still constrained on the roll of the ballot. That's the pre-post-fiat distinction arguments I made earlier in this.
Alright, I'd just like to say that the timer went off before you made the framing arguments.
Sure.
So, alright. I have 3:14 left. My timer's annoying, so I have to individually add the seconds. Alright, time starts now. Which cards did he read? Actually, that doesn't matter. Did he perm the Neolib K? Because I didn't get one.
No, not explicit.
Right. Not explicit, so.
That's what I said, yeah.
Alright, no new cards. Order is going to be neolib, or theory, neolib, on case. Sorry, this dude is so weird. Alright, are we good?
You said no new cards.
Huh? No new cards. Alright. First is a counterinterpretation. The neg may read two conditional advocacies that they're hitting a new affirmative. He said in like his email before round as when he asked reading that it's a new affirmative, so don't let him pigeon out of that PSI meets here standards. One is information processing. Conditionality enhances information processing of people who multiple conditional advocacies that they have to learn and reconcile many types of arguments and links to education pieces by critical increasing critical thinking skills in this. And this explains when especially when you consider this explains when you consider that you're hitting a new affirmative because you need to figure out many ways to test a new argument that you don't know before round. So by reading more advocacies and seeing their after responses, you're able to increase the education by seeing what clash it happens, and this turns his substantive engagement standard. Next is a B-point competencies for aspects, last piece, there's no two in R and debate that gets in narrative. This error debate is specific issues in the two are the negative can't reciprocate common advocacies counter that unreciprocal relationship by letting the negative narrative specific arguments. He has athletes to plan one unlimited prep. The evidence before the round what plan they're gonna run the neg doesn't be is that they didn't want to if they didn't want to deal with a specific plan or number of counterplays they could have run the after really what's affix the plan the neg should get to run multiple different arguments because AF has to defend multiple different paths of the plan. D is gets permutation what is the functional equivalent of a conditional advocacy because it means that the AF has multiple advocacies so they can go to they wanted to in the two AR. This turns Stratsky. E is a counterplan just like any other argument is only disadvantage of doing the AF with any other disadvantage. The AF needs to respond to 9 by extended. This increases the education of the debate because there are more possible arguments to be read in the debate. Now it's voters. He doesn't read any voters. So are going to default to education. Education is a voter. Education is important to debate because of arguments that win are no longer educational. The debaters will be more inclined to make uneducational arguments simply so they can win if education is removed from the debate. There will no longer be a purpose to particular debate. Schools no longer fund debate program. And he doesn't read any arguments for no RVIs. Be very skeptical of his no RVIs in the next speech because he doesn't make it in the speech and I can't respond to his specific warrants for no RVIs. You're gonna give me the RVI for reciprocity if the AF can't win the debate by writing on the theory flow. The neg will constantly run theory. My opponent is then only able to win on theory when I can only put defense on theory and I must still go for all the offense framework this debate. This is completely skews the debate. The most I should have an equal opportunity to win the debate and if I win the theory shell, which I will, then it's silly that I don't get to win on it just because it's a really significant portion of my time that I had to deal with now in his standards. First on Stratsky, one turn you Stratsky me by reading a new affirmative, only giving to me 2 words about it, which were the words contact. So Stratsky flows in my direction. Even if you buy Stratsky, our argument about information processing outweighs because this is an out of round skill fairness. You don't read a voter about education about why fairness is a voter, and V you're gonna go for education on the information processing standard. This is really good on this because it talks about the skills we actually take out of the debate round because I'm able to think about things from multiple perspectives and I'm able to test things from multiple perspectives. Also, this Stratsky argument is moved on the substantive education argument. One, there's more ways to test the affirmative that's increasing the substantive education as the 1 AR speech has to deal with all the advocacies. We're only at 2 condo advocacies. It's not that bad. You just have to it's only 2 condo advocacies and it's giving us more ways to test the AF, which is more net educational because of the skills we take away from the debate round. He's gonna go up and say substantive we don't have access to Stratsky or substantive education, but the Stratsky argument is predicated upon a premise. The counterinterp solves for this because it talks about how you can read 2 condo shells when hitting a new AF, which is a Stratsky because the neg is unprepared going into the round and needs a way to test AF on multiple angles. Not as a substantive education argument. The more argument we're going for is that we actually have more substantive education as we're able to test AF from multiple angles. Give us a RVI because I had to deal with this. I had to deal with this theory shell. 2 condo is completely reasonable. If I win the theory shell, you grant me the RVI. Now on neolib. his arguments on neoliberal really bad, and it's reason why you're going to vote for neolib K in this round. He says that we're going to the app, one in the case is a prior question. Before we can discuss strategies for solving your problem, you have to know the problem. The affirmative is no as specific foundation. They're understanding the world that isn't affected by neoliberalism. Failure to understand the ideological bias pieces of our source of leads to systematic and misdiagnosis. Zero policy failure. 2 is the role of the ballot recluse, or actually, no, skip that one. 3, confronting neoliberalism controls internal link to fairness because it creates and sustains social inequalities of wealth and privilege, cultivating critical subjectivity sources ideologies, the key internal link to any effective action against inequity, and so extend the critique. That was infected with neoliberal ideology. Leaks are a vehicle for corporate and government propaganda, seal the bonds between media and social power structures, faith that the media will check political and economic leads contribute to the manufacturing of democracy and noticing consequences of neoliberalism. Turns out he's the AF. Even if he goes up in his next speech and says all the links are consequential, so reject framing, and he wins that consequentialism is bad, it's still a way for us to determine our impacts, and we have non-consequentialism impacts. The Noam and Chomsky card, the Chomsky and Herman G card is really good on this. It says the media purposely allows inconvenient facts to surface occasionally to maintain a near objectivity, further legitimizing the system. It's not about the consequences that happen, it's about the AC's legitimization of the system. Start this argument, just as the reason why you're going to vote on the critique. Link talks about how the AF encourages neoliberal belief system through using the media self for privacy coercion, which is not a consequential argument. So extend the impacts. Extend the impacts of faith that the media will check political and economic leads contributes to the manufacture of consent, which kills true democracy. This is this term the ACs were not all able to contribute and were not able to access truth and non-coercion and stuff like that. Democracy doesn't exist. And unleashing the devastating consequences of neoliberalism. This turns out always advertises a prior obligation to cultivate critical subjectivity towards neoliberalism. If we win that, our impacts are important. If we win that, our impacts and if we win that, our impacts linked to content framing, which I'm going to do some work on. Which I'm going to do some work on. So on the So all I have to win this round, other than the theory shell, is that if the K fits under Kantian philosophy, that means you vote for the K. He says that the K is dependent on consequences, but the K actually fits under Kantian ethics, and the K shows that the F actually decreases Kantian ethics. Because we're decreasing the amount of truth, as all the cards in the K say that the elites are using a different conception of truth, which A, decreases universalizability because there's a different subject conception between the elites and regular people, and B, it discourages truth telling, as elites can just shape whatever rule they want from the media. He's going to go up and say no link, but we actually really do link strongly because due to the second Noam Chomsky card. And on the case, even if the case is a good idea, the epistemological framing of the K is a prior reason to vote. So first thing you're going to vote on is the theory shell. I read an RVI. He didn't read any words for the RVIs, or no RVIs bad, so it's reason to vote, and then on the K.
Orders, overview, shell, and then maybe the cap, right?
Condo, you said?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So, is anyone not ready?
Oh, good. Oh, wait. Wrong color. You're blue.
Yes.
the meta level weighing analysis in the last speech was not great. I'm gonna win that the shell comes forward. The shell comes forward. It should be evaluated as a prior question of the critique. And I did read a fairness vote. Your analysis on the fairness arguments on the shell proper are bound. I'm gonna extend offense and win sufficient defense to win the theory debate on the comparison between the shell and capitalism proper. Your point is that the only argument that you make in the last speech is that the capitalism controls the internal link to fairness because the critique is an action against like inequality in the real world. Obviously, your point is that this conflates things, the notion of inequality within the round and outside the round. Something like a movement against capitalism may be effective against like things like structural class inequality outside the round, but within the context of the round, you reading the critique doesn't actually do anything for me or for the judge, in terms of rectifying the fairness view that I've already won on the shell. Should be at the very least a question of very specific comparative analysis. Second is that the shell, think of the shell as a meta-theoretical index to the critique, i.e. I couldn't engage with it and therefore deny the truth values of the arguments on the critique because of the abuse on the shell proper. The interpretation debaters may not defend more than extend the interpretation debaters may not defend more than one conditional adequacy. Overview is that all the arguments to your all the arguments on your counter interpretation are arguments why condo is good, things like testing, education, etc. But matters that you cannot read multiple conditional adequacies. If you read one condo adequacy, that's sufficient to garner all the net benefits, or at the very least garner a majority of the educational net benefits coming out of the counter interp, which means you voted reverse offense on the fairness argument. Also, I did read a fairness voter. I said verbatim fairness debate is compatible by the rules. There's always going to be side constraints, which means that it's relevant to your ballot. I'm going for the Stratsky argument that the arguments are functionally nibs because only you can generate offense from the offset can. That means that opponent gets a 3-to-1 structural advantage. It becomes problematic within time crunch 1 AR. So it takes out like you're affirming or like you're negating or you're negating harder arguments. You say the app has infinite prep skew and that the AC gets the last speech, which means that you can't reciprocate against new arguments and new collapses done in the 2 AR. Point is that the 1 AR collapse argument directly interacts with this and proves that I can't collapse with things like when in the 2 AR and 2 NR because the 2 NR collapse is already devastating. You've already split me too thin in the 1 AR, which means that I can draw out access to those sorts of things. The second is that 2 NR has, and second is obviously there's just a slight skew that applies to several rounds. Should be a question of very specific fairness comparative analysis. I've won that your arguments are structural skews, not substantive or not like substantive like set bias to fairness skews that haven't really been weighed. Which means that in terms of the fairness analysis, I'm pretty much 100% strength of link. The only arguments that could apply here, you say that perms are conditional advocacies. No, they're tests of competition. I can't literally change my advocacy in the 1 AR. The argument doesn't apply to take out the fact that the argument that you could possibly make is an individual nib. You also say that just to treat it like a counterplan, but obviously the fact that you kick it means that I also had to allocate time to it and can't. The fact that 1 AR split too thin takes that out on your like education arguments for it independently. Stratsky controls the internal link. Obviously, if I couldn't engage or have a discussion in the first place because I was structurally impeded from even accessing your counterplan because you kicked it, then we never get like that testing, education, etc. Which means this next to the lexical prerequisite your time frame arguments so multiply because it's a question of having the ability to engage with them in the first place.
Debate.
Debate.
I remember like first day of AU World, like Mr. Allen was like, what news sources do you guys read? And he's like CNN. And I was like the one person that didn't say CNN. Yeah, it was like the Atlantic. It was like fancy. Can I braid your hair?
I'm hungry. You have 2 pieces?